The void rippled where no ripple belonged. In the frozen expanse of the Imperium's galaxy, where pitiless stars glimmered like shards of ice, the very skein of reality twisted upon itself until astropaths howled in madness and navigators bled from their fabled third eyes. Something alien had forced its way through. It was not warp-born, no demon of the Imperium clawing into existence, but an intrusion from some uncharted elsewhere. On the command bridge of the Imperial cruiser Fervent Decree, Captain Aelin Thawne clenched the cold brass railing of his throne as crimson runes pulsed across every console, casting the chamber in a warlike glow. "Report," he barked, his voice firm though the deck plates shivered beneath his boots. "Unclassified anomaly, Lord Captain," answered the sensorium officer, Vox crackling. "Breach in real space detected. No warp signature." Thawne's augmetic eye narrowed, lenses grinding as the main view screen magnified the disturbance. The display sharpened, and impossibility took shape. Suspended in the black stood a solitary figure, merely a man, his skull bare, his face unreadable, clad in a sun-yellow body glove with a white cape that drifted as if some earthly breeze toyed with it instead of the perfect silence of space. No void suit encased him, no respirator or halo field offered protection. "By the throne," Thawne breathed, tracing the sign of the Aquila across his breastplate. "What Xenos trickery is this?" As though sensing their scrutiny, the stranger slowly pivoted and raised one hand in an almost genial salute. "Open a Vox channel," Thawne ordered at once. Yet before the comm officer's fingers could touch the rune keys, the apparition simply ceased. No flash of teleportation, no blur of acceleration, gone between a single enhanced heartbeat and the next. "Initiate a full sensor sweep. Locate it," Thawne commanded, his tone now a blade drawn in the dark. Klaxons shrieked like tortured metal, and the warning runes escalated from urgent crimson to a violent magenta that screamed catastrophe. "Captain, he's aboard!" The sensorium officer's voice cracked through the Vox. On the Fervent Decree's main hangar deck, the impossible intruder now stood calmly encircled by stunned tech priests and steel-eyed naval armsmen. Dozens of hellguns tracked his unremarkable frame with unwavering precision. The bald stranger merely scratched his head and let his gaze wander with the idle curiosity of a man lost in a market square. Hey," he said, voice plain and without drama. "Is this Earth? Everything looks different." Beneath robes of blood crimson, Magos Delphinius inclined his hunched form forward, a mechadendrite coiling outward like a questioning serpent. Cascades of aspect readings flooded his augmetic vision, yet none aligned with any known biological or machine signature. Through the monotone of his Vox grill came a ritual challenge. "You stand within a warship of the God Emperor's Holy Navy. Declare your species and intent." The stranger blinked slowly. "Name Saitama, human, just a hero for fun." The barrels of the hellguns remained coldly fixed. No guardsman lowered a weapon. Deep within layered data stacks, Delphinius searched for any record of such a cult of heroes. "Null. This vessel proceeds to the hive world Veus Magna," he intoned. "You will be confined and delivered to its authorities for examination and judgment." Saitama gave a small, indifferent shrug. "Sure, whatever." 300 kilometers beneath the foul, chemical-choked skies of Veus Magna, deep within the labyrinthine guts of Hive Terte, a nightmare quietly took root. The Underhive was no stranger to monstrosities, but the scale of this particular menace lay beyond anything the planetary authorities could yet fathom. Greenskin spores, carried on poison winds from the reeking marsh wastes beyond the hive, had clung to the damp, forgotten walls of ancient sublevels and thrived. For 3 full Terran years, they gestated in darkness, swelling in secret. 6 months passed. The first brutish orc boys clawed their way into the light, smashing and stomping through local ganger clans and degenerate mutant tribes. Now an entire Wa seethed in the hive's blackest arteries, marshaled by a sly and vicious warboss styling himself Grim Skull Darhammer. The higher strata of the hive only realized the infection's depth when level 219 fell ominously silent. Vox links died without warning. Manufactorum output flatlined. Revenue teams sent to enforce the tithe simply vanished. When an Adeptus Arbit's investigation finally breached the level, they discovered only gore-slicked passages streaked with green and walls defaced by savage glyphs. By the time the fervent decree settled into Vias Magna's orbit, the Greenskin Rebellion had already swallowed 4 further levels and was thrusting outward into neighboring sectors. Desperate, the planetary defense forces dug in along level 214, but their heavy stubbers and laser guns faltered against the brutal efficiency of orcish weaponry. Within the Grand Strategium, Governor Lux Hellbane stood wreathed in pale, hololithic light, the holograms of the infected zones bleeding crimson across the display. His laureled face was drained of all color. How long until Imperial Guard reinforcements arrive? He demanded of his tense military adjutant, each word edged with the weight of a world on the brink. 3 standard days, my lord, the adjutant replied, her uniform flawless despite the chaos threatening to swallow the hive. The 84th Cadian have been diverted from the Gehenna campaign. Governor Lux Hellbane's jaw tightened as he gave a grim nod. And can we hold that long? The woman's silence was answer enough. Slowly, Hellbane turned toward the 3rd figure in the strategium, a towering presence wrapped in a high-collared coat of midnight black. Inquisitor Morton Hellbrand of the Ordo Xenos regarded the hololithic war map with a predator's stillness, his cold eyes measuring each crimson-flaring district. When he spoke, the sound was almost gentle, yet edged like a power blade. I have examined the Fervent Decree's reports concerning the anomaly they encountered. This individual, I want him. With respect, Lord Inquisitor, Hellbane began, voice strained. We face an orc uprising that endangers the entire hive cluster. Surely your priority. Do not presume to guide my priorities, Hellbrand cut in, words slicing like a last beam. The greenskin infestation is a known equation. This stranger is not. In the calculus of threats to the Imperium, the unknown outweighs the known every time. The governor's protest died unsaid. He lowered his gaze. As you command, my lord. Excellent. Arrange for the stranger to be transferred to the Spear of Judgment, Hellbrand continued, naming the sleek black vessel moored to the orbital tether. I will conduct the interrogation myself. Turning to depart, he paused at the threshold and looked back, a glint of dark amusement in his eye. And Governor, do keep your hive intact until the guard arrives. The bureaucracy of planetary extinction is exceedingly tedious. Saitama sat alone in a reinforced cell aboard the orbital tether station, eyes half-lidded as he stared at the blank wall with utter indifference. His gloves had been taken, yet his sun-yellow suit and white cape remained untouched. The chamber itself was a fortress, adamantium walls laced with void shield generators, purpose-built to contain the most lethal renegades bound for the Emperor's prison hulks. All that grim engineering felt almost laughable against the mild figure sitting cross-legged within. With a hydraulic sigh, the door irised open, A squad of soldiers in black carapace armor advanced, laser guns raised in perfect drill. Behind them strode Inquisitor Morton Hellbrand, psychic hood casting a cold halo about his austere features. "So," he said evenly, "you claim to be human." Saitama tilted his head lazily. "Yeah, from, Terror, Earth. Though everything looks kinda different here." Hellbrand's eyes narrowed to slits. "And you call yourself a hero for fun?" "It's just a hobby," Saitama answered with a faint shrug. The Inquisitor began a slow, predatory circle, scrutinizing the seated man from every angle. "You endured the void unprotected. You breached the Geller fields and void shields of an Imperial cruiser as though they were mist. In decades of service to the God Emperor, I have never met a human with such capabilities." Saitama idly scratched his ear. "I just train a lot. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, 10-kilometer run, every day." A thin, cold smile traced Hellbrand's lips. "Fascinating? And this routine alone grants you survival in hard vacuum?" "I guess so." The Inquisitor halted, cloak settling like a shadow. "Then 3 possibilities remain before me. 1. You are a Xenos infiltrator of unmatched mimetic skill. 2. A warp-spawned entity made flesh. 3. Something stranger still, perhaps a perpetual or some aberrant twist in the human genome." Saitama blinked once. "Okay. To know which," Hellbrand continued, "I must perform a full and invasive examination. You will—" A shrill priority tone cut him off, trilling from his wrist communicator. He tapped the rune. "My lord," gasped a frantic Vox voice, "the greenskins have broken the level 214 cordon. They're pouring upward through all primary access shafts. Casualties, catastrophic. Hellbrand's features hardened to iron. Deploy Adeptus Arbit's reserves. Authorization, Hellbrand Omega-7. Negative, Lord. Arbit's precincts on levels 210 through 213 are already overrun. We intercept scattered survivor Vox, but no organized defense remains." The Inquisitor's jaw clenched. "Orbital defenses. Still functional, my lord. But Governor Hellbane refuses permission to fire upon the hive itself. Too many loyal citizens would die." "Sentimental fool," Hellbrand hissed under his breath. Through the entire exchange, Saitama had watched with widening curiosity. "So there's a fight happening?" he asked at last. Hellbrand cast him a sharp look, annoyance flickering in his eyes. "Yes, a Xenos infestation threatens this world. That is none of your concern." Saitama rose, stretching with careless ease. "Actually, that sounds exactly like my concern. Monsters hurting people, that's hero work." Hellbrand's voice chilled. "You will remain here until I determine your origin and intent." Saitama shrugged. "Nah, I'm going to check it out." Before anyone could even shout, the bald stranger simply stepped forward. The adamantium bulkhead ahead of him folded like wet parchment, and the void shield guttered, flared, and died. Sirens wailed across the orbital station as red warning runes pulsed in frantic succession. "After him!" Hellbrand barked, but Saitama was already gone. Far below, in the upper strata of hive, terror reigned like molten iron. Greenskin warbands surged upward through transit shafts and cargo elevators, hacking and shooting anything in their path. Planetary Defense Force squads poured disciplined last fire into the first waves, felling dozens. Yet for every orc boy that collapsed, 3 more clambered over the growing mound of bodies, bellowing for blood and glory. Upon a barricade of overturned cargo haulers, Commissioner Thade planted his boots, bolt pistol clenched in one hand, roaring chainsword in the other. "Stand fast, men of Veus. he thundered over the din. For the Emperor and for the hive. The orc tide parted as something vast pushed forward. Warboss Grimskull Darhammer loomed nearly 3 meters tall, his brutalized power armor dripping with trophies ripped from slain PDF officers. In his massive claw, he hefted a crude hammer cobbled from the drive housing of a Lehman Russ battle tank. "We!" he roared, and the cry erupted from thousands of slavering throats behind him. Commissioner Thade fired, his bolt pistol spitting a mass-reactive shell that slammed square into the warboss's chest, blossoming in smoke and fire. As the haze cleared, Grimskull still stood, unshaken and grinning with savage delight, a deep, rasping laugh rolling over the battlefield like thunder. "Puny Humie?" Grimskull snarled, hefting his colossal hammer overhead. "I'm gonna smash this hive to rubble, then I'll smash every Yuva hive there is. Then I'll build me the biggest rock you ever seen and sail the stars until all's smashed." With a ground-quaking bellow, the greenskin warboss charged, the Ferrocrete trembling beneath his massive boots. PDF troopers broke and scattered in sheer panic. Only Commissioner Thade remained, Chain's words snarling defiance as he braced for what seemed certain death. A sudden yellow blur sliced through the chaos. Saitama appeared between the Commissioner and the onrushing brute, hands hanging loosely at his sides, his calm face tilted upward with mild curiosity. "So, you're the monster causing all this trouble?" he asked. Grimskull skidded to a halt, small red eyes blinking wide in surprise before narrowing with savage delight at this unexpected challenger. "And what's you supposed to be, huh? Some kind of weird boy in a clown suit?" Saitama gave a slight shrug. "Just a guy. A hero for fun." Behind their chieftain, the orcs erupted in rasping laughter, a noise of grinding iron and splintering bone. Grimskull's jagged grin widened. "Fun's over, Baldy," he roared, swinging his improvised hammer downward with force enough to crater a fortress wall. Saitama merely raised one hand and caught the descending weapon in his palm. The titanic impact exploded outward, hurling both PDF soldiers and orcs from their feet, shattering nearby viewports and sending dust cascading from the hive's vaulted ceiling hundreds of meters above. Yet the bald human stood unmoved, expression unchanged, gripping the hammer as if it were weightless. "That all you've got?" he asked evenly. With a furious bellow, Grimskull wrenched the weapon free and swung again, pouring every ounce of his brutal strength into the next earth-shaking strike. Again the hammer descended, and again Saitama stopped it, this time with nothing more than a single index finger. "You're pretty strong," he said evenly, "but not that strong." The bald hero drew back his other hand with the casual ease of someone brushing away a fly. Normal punch. His fist moved forward without a blur, almost lazy, and touched the center of Grimskull Darhammer's chest. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. The towering warboss glanced down, puzzled by the small fist resting on his armor. Then reality caught up. Grimskull simply vanished, erupting not in blood or shattered bone, but in a flawless cone of annihilation that ripped 300 meters through the hive, vaporizing dozens of orcs and boring a perfect circular tunnel across 6 full levels. An uncanny silence followed as drifting dust settled, while PDF soldiers and greenskins alike stood rigid, stunned into breathless disbelief. Saitama lowered his fist, a faint look of disappointment passing over his face. "Huh. One punch again," he murmured. The remaining orcs wavered only a heartbeat before panic consumed them. Their mighty warboss, slayer of hive levels and terror of the underhive, had been erased with a single casual blow. Chaos erupted as they turned and fled, trampling one another in a desperate scramble to escape the yellow-suited force of doom. Commissioner Thade stood rooted to the barricade, bolt pistol dangling forgotten at his side. "Emperor, preserve us," he whispered, awe and disbelief mingling in his voice. "What are you?" Saitama scratched the smooth crown of his head. "Told you already. Just a hero." Word of the miracle at Hive spread through Veus Magna like wildfire through dry scrub. Vox relays, official and black market alike, crackled with fevered accounts of the bald savior who felled an orc war boss with a single strike. Surveillance-picked captures leapt from data slate to data slate, carried by curious adepts and breathless laborers. In cramped worker dorms and gilded noble spires, citizens whispered that the Emperor himself had sent this yellow-clad champion to deliver them. Deep within the governor's palace, Inquisitor Morton Hellbrand watched the combat footage for the 12th time. His face remained an unreadable mask, yet the taut lines around his eyes betrayed a mind turning with sharpened concern. "Analysis," he said quietly to the robed figure beside him. "Magos biologies?" Theron inclined his augmetic head. "Inconclusive, Lord Inquisitor. The subject's strength surpasses even Astarte's parameters. No recorded mutation or enhancement can account for such capability. Could he be a psyker? Some aberrant strain of biomantic power? Impossible." The augurs that scour the warp for the faintest psychic ripple reported nothing. Hellbrand drummed a gloved finger against his chin. The sound a soft rasp of leather on steel. "A perpetual, then?" he mused. Across the ages, Imperial chronicles speak of such deathless figures. Yet even those rare anomalies seldom manifest such staggering physical prowess. The Magos inclined his head, mechadendrites twitching. Conceivably, he conceded, though unprecedented in this form. The Inquisitor rose from his seat, the black of his robe whispering as he paced the vault-like sanctum where incense and machine oil hung heavy. "Whatever he is," Hellbrand said at last, voice flat as a blade's edge, "he could destabilize the Imperium itself. Already the rabble murmur that he bears the Emperor's mandate. In a week, they will anoint him a living saint." The interrogator bowed slightly. "Your directive, my lord?" Hellbrand halted before a vast stained glass window where the Master of Mankind blazed in frozen triumph. "Track him. Watch without contact. Only act if there is no alternative." A pause, then colder still. "Position the kill teams. Keep them hidden. Should he turn against us?" A smile, thin and lethal, cut across his face. "Then we shall learn if an Imperial assassin can finish what an orc warboss could not." In the uneasy days that followed, Veus Magna lay beneath a strained quiet. The surviving orcs slunk into the lowest underhive, scattered and demoralized. When the 84th Kadon finally descended to seal the warrens, they met barely a token fight. The greenskin will shattered with their fallen leader. Saitama roamed the teeming middle hive levels with casual aimlessness, utterly indifferent to the seismic consequences of his presence. Wherever he drifted, he interrupted muggings or black market brawls with effortless flicks of strength, lent his hands to citizens straining beneath industrial loads, and devoured staggering quantities of any meal pressed upon him. People followed like pilgrims, fingers stretching to graze the white folds of his cape, as though it were a fragment of the Emperor's own shroud. From the deep gloom of ventilation shafts and collapsed hab arches, the eyes of Inquisitor Hellbrand's covert operatives never left him. Vox quills captured every gesture, every casual remark, every act of speed and might that defied reason or physics. Yet their vigilance was not solitary. Far beyond the veil of matter, in the roiling nightmare ocean of the Imperium, something vast and patient awoke. The psychic aftershock of Saitama's impossible strength pulsed outward like concentric scars across the warp. a signal no demon could ignore. Ancient predators of the ruinous powers fixed their baleful regard on Vius Magna. Drawn by the rising tide of devotion and wonder, the caped stranger inspired. Exactly 8 days after his unexplained landing, the silence of orbit broke as a new silhouette resolved against the void. The Adeptus Mechanicus vessel, Truth of Mars, glided into alignment beside the world's sky-piercing tether, its spired sensor arrays turning with predatory precision toward the surface far below. Within its sanctum of cogitators and incense-veiled steel, Archmagos Dominus Veneratus IX parsed the incoming reports of Magos biologist Theron. His mind diffused between metal-swaddled flesh and the vast machine thought of his ship, calculations unfolding at a velocity no mortal brain could hope to equal. Fascinating, he intoned, the syllables issuing from his ancient Vox synthesizer as a layered harmony of high Gothic and clipped binaric cant. This specimen exhibits an efficiency of force deployment approaching the very limits of theoretical possibility. His chief janitor inclined in a precise bow. The fabricator locum has sanctioned full resource allocation for this inquiry. Another tech adept ventured, "Lord, the subject could represent a forgotten strand of Archotech human augmentation." Veneratus's optics flared with cold light. "Indeed, I'll assemble a recovery cadre. I require tissue matrices, neural resonance maps, and comprehensive biomechanical stress assays." A cautious pause followed. Archmagos, Lord Inquisitor Hellbrant, has asserted jurisdiction over the individual. What emerged from Veneratus's vox was half static, half something like amusement. The Inquisition exists to confine perceived threats, Janitor. The Mechanicus exists to comprehend and reclaim them. Our aims need not collide, provided our methods remain discreet. "As you decree, Archmagos," the janitor murmured, retreating into shadows of incense and cogitator glow. Far below, in the hive block district the locals named the Warren, Saitama perched on the rim of a weather-scarred roof, boots swinging over a kilometer of smog-shrouded abyss. Beside him lounged Kalia, a wiry gang runner who had unilaterally chosen to serve as his guide through Varus Magna's labyrinth. "So you truly remember nothing of how you arrived?" she asked, offering a dented ration bar. Saitama accepted it with a mild nod. "Not really. I was chasing this strange monster back home. It could open portals or something. I followed one, and next thing I knew, I was drifting in space." He took a bite of the ration bar and immediately grimaced. "This tastes awful." Kalia chuckled, brushing soot from her sleeve. "Best you'll get unless you've got the creds for upper hive cuisine." "Better than nothing," Saitama said with a small nod, chewing on. "Anyway, that ship spotted me, and next thing I knew, I was here." The gang runner studied the calm outline of his face. "You're really not worried about ever getting back home?" Saitama lifted one shoulder in a lazy shrug. "It'll sort itself out. It always does." "Must be nice," Kalia murmured, her gaze drifting across the smog-drowned skyline. "To be so strong that nothing can hurt you." "Honestly, it's boring," he replied flatly. "Back home I kept searching for a real fight. Someone who could actually push me. But everyone went down with one punch." Kalia's eyes widened. "You want someone who could hurt you?" "I want something that makes me feel alive," he corrected, crushing the empty wrapper into a tight ball. "When you're too strong, the thrill just disappears." Before she could form an answer, a sharp scream ripped up from the streets below, then another, then many more, until the night itself seemed to shriek with terror and pain. Saitama rose without haste. "Sounds like trouble." A heartbeat later, he sprang from the rooftop, white cape snapping wide as he plunged toward the chaos. Kalia stared after him, then scrambled to the nearest access ladder. She would follow, as always. Someone had to bear witness to his impossible deeds. Below, the street had turned into a waking nightmare. The very air itself gaped open, torn by forces unseen. Reality itself split like torn parchment, exposing the howling lunacy of the warp beneath. Through that raw wound, spilled entities no human tongue could properly name. Demons of the ruinous powers given dreadful shape. At their forefront strode a greater demon of Khorne, a colossus plated in brass and corded with monstrous muscle, its every step shaking the Ferrocrete underfoot. A lupine skull crowned with barbed horns scraped the arched ceiling of the hab-block corridor as it advanced. Behind it surged a shrieking host of lesser fiends, a living tide of claws and spite. The stationed PDF troopers broke first into action, laser guns chattering ruby fire, but their beams splashed harmlessly across the abomination's warp-forged hide. The giant roared with savage mirth and swept its titanic axe in a single contemptuous arc, shearing through 3 soldiers and the Ferrocrete wall beyond as though both were parchment. Into this nightmare descent dropped Saitama, landing squarely in the demon's path with a thud that cracked the street. He stood, brushed the dust from his yellow suit, and looked up. "Hey," he said evenly, "you need to stop that." The towering horror paused, flame-bright eyes narrowing as it regarded the unremarkable figure before it. Drawing a breath deeper than storms, it tasted the air with senses older than suns. "What is this?" The demon's voice boomed, making dust rain from fractured walls. No fear, no hatred, no rage. What mortal stands before me? Saitama simply shrugged. Just a guy who's a hero for fun. The demon threw back its head and laughed. A sound so violent nearby, humans bled from their ears. "A hero?" The towering demon rumbled, voice like grinding iron. "In this universe, there are no heroes, little mortal. Only pawns upon the great game board." "Yeah, whatever," Saitama replied, idly scratching his ear. "But I'm going to need you to head back to wherever you crawled from. You're scaring people." The demon's booming laughter halted like a slammed vault door. Its burning eyes locked on the bald man, twin furnaces of hate. "You dare issue commands to me? I am Cathrax, the Worldbreaker, favored of Khorne, reaper of skulls." Saitama gave a small nod. "Okay. So, are you leaving? Or am I going to have to make you?" With a roar that split Ferrocrete and shook the air itself, Cathrax swung its colossal axe, an engine of slaughter forged in the blood god's own furnaces and quenched in the souls of 1,000 space marines. The weapon came down with apocalyptic might. Saitama simply raised one hand and caught the descending edge between thumb and forefinger. The world fell silent. The demon stared, dumbstruck. Even its lesser kin faltered mid-charge, sensing a reality-defying moment. "That's it?" Saitama asked, mild disappointment in his voice. "I thought demons were supposed to be strong." Cathrax wrenched at the haft, muscles and warp energy straining, but Saitama's grip never shifted. With a snarl, the monster abandoned the axe and summoned a massive brass sword in its other claw. "D!" it roared, driving the blade straight toward Saitama's heart. The strike landed, and the sword exploded into glittering fragments, which hissed and melted into ectoplasmic slime on the cracked street. Saitama exhaled, a quiet sigh. "This is getting old." Saitama flicked a single finger against the demon's knee. The joint detonated like a shell burst, hurling the giant to the pavement. Cathrax bellowed in agony and wrath, a sound so piercing that bystanders dropped to their knees, blood weeping from their eyes. One last chance. Saitama said evenly, standing over the writhing monster. "Go back to wherever you came from." The demon spat warp fire, its mangled limb already knitting with unnatural speed. "Khorne cares not whence the blood flows," it snarled, voice a furnace of hatred. "Only that it flows. Your blood will be his." Saitama tilted his head, expression flat. "I don't think so. Serious punch." His arm blurred. This was no idle tap, but a strike delivered with true resolve. The blow slammed into Cathrax's chest, and the world seemed to warp around the point of impact. The Greater Daemon did not merely explode as the orc warboss once had. It came apart at a deeper level, its essence scattering through both matter and the Imperium. The shockwave rolled outward, smashing into the warp rift that had birthed the incursion. The gash in reality convulsed like a dying star and collapsed inward with a sound like the death cry of forgotten gods. Deprived of the rift's sustaining power, the lesser demons shrieked and dissolved into motes of vanishing unreality. Then came silence, profound and absolute. The surviving PDF troopers could only stare, weapons lowered, awestruck by the bald stranger who stood unscathed amid the fading echoes of impossible destruction. From a narrow side alley, Kalia appeared, face bloodless, yet eyes blazing with triumph. "Did you see that?" she cried to the stunned troopers. "All of you saw it? He destroyed a Greater Daemon with a single punch. He is the Emperor's champion." One by one, the soldiers dropped to their knees, hands crossed upon their chests in the sign of the Aquila. All along the shattered street, civilians crept from hiding and followed suit, sinking to the ground in awestruck reverence. Saitama rubbed the back of his head, visibly uneasy. "Guys, it's really not a big deal," he murmured. But his protest vanished beneath the chant that rose like a storm. "Saint of the One Punch! Saint of the One Punch!" The words rolled outward, echoing through the hive canyons. High above, within the orbital tether's command station, Inquisitor Hellbrant observed the spectacle through the optic feeds of hidden servitors. His face remained a mask of iron, but his fingers tightened on the edge of the console until they trembled. "This changes everything," he breathed. From the darkness behind him stepped a figure sheathed in adaptive chameleonic armor. The neural shunt ports along its skull, marking it as an operative of the Officio Assassinorum. The silent killer inclined its head, awaiting command. "Not yet," Hellbrant said without looking back. "Our guest has already served the Imperium, closing a warp breach that could have devoured the entire hive. More significant still, he has exposed a vital flaw." The assassin cocked its head in mute query. "He can be provoked," the Inquisitor explained. "That hero's instinct forces him to confront danger, and he is weaving ties among the populace." A thin, cold smile curved Hellbrandt's lips. "When the time comes," he murmured, "we will know exactly how to control him." The next 3 days passed in an eerie calm across Veus Magna. The demonic incursion had been sealed, the orc menace annihilated, and the hive's multitudes returned to their labor with a new, fervent energy. Yet everywhere the legend of the strange savior spread. Whispers carried from Hab-Block to Manufactorum, from the lofty spires of nobles to the smoke-choked hovels of the Underhive. Crude votive charms and hastily etched icons bearing Saitama's likeness began appearing beside sacred images of the God Emperor in humble worker shrines. Alarmed, Governor Hellbane convened his highest council. Around the Grand Chamber's obsidian table sat the Cardinal's stern representative in jewel-crusted vestments, the Lord Marshal of the Planetary Defense Force, the Seneschal of the Merchant Guild, and delegates of the Administratum and Adeptus Mechanicus. Inquisitor Hellbrant kept to the room's shadowed edge, claiming the isolation his rank allowed. This cult of personality troubles me, Hellbane declared gravely. The ecclesiarchy reports falling attendance at official rites as the populace flocks instead to retell miracles of the so-called saint of the One Punch. The cardinal's envoy inclined her head, expression flint hard. It skirts perilously close to heresy, my lord. The man has never sought imperial recognition, yet the masses venerate him as a living saint. The Lord Marshal answered with a soldier's bluntness. Can you blame them? He slew an orc warlord and banished a Greater Daemon. In the eyes of common citizens, what else could he be but an instrument of the Emperor? A dry voice cut through the chamber. The question, Inquisitor Hellbrand interposed, is not how he appears, but what he truly is, and what threat he may pose to imperial authority. All eyes shifted to the black-clad Inquisitor. Governor Hellbane inclined forward. Have your inquiries yielded anything of substance, Lord Inquisitor? Some, Hellbrand said. We know his strength exceeds all metrics preserved in the Imperial archives. We know he endures the vacuum of space unshielded. And we know he can annihilate warp-born entities with sheer physical force, an impossibility without psychic talent or consecrated weaponry. Then he is a miracle, breathed the Cardinal's representative. Or an abomination, Hellbrand replied coldly, something never meant to exist within a human frame. From the far side of the chamber, the hunched Mechanicus delegate, a lattice of clicking augmetic limbs, emitted a sound like grinding cogs. The Archmagos Dominus believes the subject to be a singular relic of architect human augmentation. The tech priest intoned. He requests that the specimen be remanded to Mechanicus custody for exhaustive study. Hellbrand's eyes narrowed to slits. The matter falls under inquisitorial jurisdiction. The danger he... A sudden thunderclap cut him short as the council doors slammed open. Saitama walked in at an unhurried pace, trailed by a breathless Kalaya and a squad of PDF troopers who had clearly failed to bar their way. Sorry to crash the meeting, Saitama said, surveying the guilt chamber with mild curiosity. But I heard you were all talking about me and figured I should probably be present. Governor Hellbane surged to his feet, face crimson with outrage. This is unacceptable. Guards, remove these intruders at once. The troopers advanced a step, but their movements were hesitant, reverence outweighing duty. None wished to seize the man many now hailed as a living saint. Saitama raised a placating hand. It's fine. Really. I just came to clear something up. He turned to the circle of dignitaries, his voice calm. I'm not a saint or anything like that. I'm just a guy who does hero work for fun, Saitama said with disarming simplicity. Back home, I was actually pretty low ranked in the Hero Association. Hero Association? Inquisitor Hellbrand repeated, a sharp, predatory light flickering in his eyes. Explain this organization. Saitama gave an indifferent shrug. It's just a group that keeps track of monsters and assigns heroes to take care of them. They rank us by strength and popularity. I stayed B-class for a long time. Behind him, Kalaya, who had been hovering nervously, stepped forward with sudden resolve. My lords, the people don't care about rankings or some distant association. They care that when demons breach the warp, he stood against them. When the orcs threatened to flood the hive, he stopped them. The girl speaks true, said the Lord Marshal, his voice carrying the weight of a battlefield veteran. In 3 days, this man has accomplished more for the defense of Veus Magna than an entire company of Space Marines could achieve in a month. Governor Hellbane sagged back into his throne. Fatigue etched deep in his features. Then tell me, Saitama, what do you want? Why have you come to my world? Saitama scratched the back of his bald head. Didn't exactly choose to come here, but since I am here, I might as well help out. That's what heroes do. Though, honestly, the monsters here are kind of disappointing. One punch and they're finished. A heavy silence fell, the meaning of his casual remark pressing on every heart like a physical weight. One punch, Hellbrant repeated softly, each word deliberate. You destroyed a greater demon of Khorne with a single blow. Do you comprehend the scale of that feat? The Imperium's most elite warriors, space marines hardened by centuries of war, would struggle terribly to match such a victory, and many would perish in the attempt. Saitama simply nodded. Yeah, I get that. It's just, I was hoping for more of a challenge, Saitama admitted, sounding almost bored. Across the table, the tech priest's optical augmetics whirred and tightened focus on the bald hero. Fascinating, the priest murmured. The subject demonstrates psychological detachment from his own capabilities. Such disassociation implies the enhancement process may have altered higher cognitive function as well. I'm not enhanced, Saitama said, irritation creeping into his voice. I just trained really hard. What kind of training could possibly, Governor Hellbane began, but his question was drowned by a sudden, piercing alarm that reverberated through the chamber like a struck bell. The Lord Marshal snapped open his wrist-mounted vox. Report, he barked. A breathless voice answered amid static. Multiple vessels have just translated into real space, my lord. Configuration matches Tyranid bioships. How many? The Marshal demanded. At least 3 hive ships with a full escort of organisms, came the frantic reply. They are on an attack vector for Veus Magna. The blood drained from Governor Hellbane's face. Throne of Terror. We have no fleet in position to intercept. The orbital batteries cannot withstand such force. Time to contact? Hellbrant pressed sharply. Hours, my lord. Perhaps less. Saitama glanced around at the council, noting the sudden heaviness in every expression. What's a Tyranid? He asked. Kalia answered, her voice a whisper of dread. The Great Devourer, a Xenos hive mind that consumes entire worlds, breaking all life into raw biomass to feed endless expansion. They are hunger incarnate at the galaxy's edge. The Cardinal's representative intoned like a funeral bell, a Xenos scourge beyond comprehension. Saitama's face brightened slightly. So, they're strong? Inquisitor Hellbrant fixed him with a stare as sharp as a blade. They have consumed thousands of worlds, erased entire sectors. Now they come for Veus Magna. Can you stop them? Governor Hellbane asked, desperation cracking his voice. Saitama only shrugged. I can try, Saitama said with a faint spark of anticipation. Sounds like it might actually be fun. On the observation deck of the orbital tether, he stood before a massive armored viewport, eyes fixed on the nightmare swelling in the void. The bioships of Hive Fleet Behemoth crowded the darkness, colossal living vessels pulsing with malevolent vitality. Some dwarfed small moons, their chitinous hides bristling with organic weaponry that vented corrosive spores into vacuum. Behind him waited Inquisitor Hellbrant, Magos biologist Theron, and a squad of Tempestus scions encased in void-sealed carapace armor. The hive ships will launch boarding spores, Hellbrant said grimly. Billions of them, each carrying warrior organisms. Orbital guns will destroy some, but countless pods will still breach the hive cities. He gestured toward the immense shapes closing in. Meanwhile, the largest vessels will begin the planetary consumption itself. Saitama nodded, his gaze never leaving the encroaching armada. "So, I need to take out the big ones first. You cannot possibly—" Baron began, then stopped as doubt flickered. Those primary bioships possessed defenses that could reduce an Imperial Navy battleship to slag. Their outer hulls endure sustained macro cannon fire without faltering. "Okay," Saitama said simply. "So they're tough. That's good." Before anyone could frame a reply, he placed one palm lightly against the armored window. A soft push followed, and the adamantium glass composite shattered like thin ice. A violent hiss became a roar as explosive decompression wrenched him into the cold void, along with every unsecured object. Emergency void shields flared to life seconds later, sealing the breach and halting the atmospheric loss. Tempestus Scions stumbled for footing, some grabbing Inquisitor Hellbrant and Magos Theron, dragging them behind a reinforced bulkhead as alarms shrieked. "Throne of Terror," someone breathed. One of the Scions whispered in awe as Saitama drifted beyond the new void shield, his white cape rippling impossibly in perfect vacuum. "Is he mad?" Governor Hellbane's eyes narrowed to slits. "He is precisely what I feared. Power beyond Imperial control." Out in the cold gulf between Veus Magna and the onrushing Tyranid swarm, Saitama angled his body toward the largest bioship. Tucking his arms to his sides, he simply willed himself forward, defying every natural law. There was no gradual buildup. He accelerated instantly, as if inertia itself refused to touch him. Across the orbital defense stations, tracking cogitators shrieked in confusion, their machine spirits murmuring static-lit prayers as they tried to reconcile the impossible data. Tech priests intoned binaric litanies of appeasement, their sensors recording velocities that should have vaporized any mortal form to drifting atoms through friction alone. But Saitama blazed through the void like a yellow comet, unbound by physics or fear. The titanic hive ship felt his coming in some alien, instinctive way. Though its vast synaptic mind could not fathom how a solitary speck could embody danger. Defensive spore mines erupted from cavernous orifices, clouds of living bombs blossoming to intercept him. He punched straight through each mine, detonating in gouts of bioplasma and venom that would have melted adamantium to slag. Yet his cape fluttered untouched. The creature's grotesque hull loomed ahead, an endless terrain of chitin plates and pulsing veins thicker than Imperial cruisers. Organic gun ports swiveled to target him, spewing torrents of corrosive acid and hypervelocity bone shards. The projectile struck like gentle rain, leaving no mark. Saitama drew back his fist, calm and absolute. "Serious series," he murmured, voice carrying even through the vacuum. "Serious punch." Saitama's fist struck the hive ship's immense hull. For a heartbeat, the void seemed to hold its breath. Then reality caught up with the impact. The bioship did not merely fracture or erupt. It simply ceased to exist as a single thing. From the point of contact, a vast cone of absolute annihilation raced outward, unweaving the creature's impossible tissues into base atoms, then into raw energy. The shockwave leapt beyond its victim, engulfing two nearby escort organisms and vaporizing them into expanding clouds of incandescent gas. Across the orbital defense stations and deep within the hive cities below, millions watched in speechless awe. The Tyranid's greatest vessel, a monstrosity that could have endured days of continuous bombardment from an entire Imperial battle group, had been erased by a solitary punch. Yet the hive mind was nothing if not adaptive. The remaining bioships instantly shifted formation, fanning wide to open a broader assault front. From their undercarriages, uncounted thousands of boarding spores erupted like a malignant storm. a living meteor shower streaking toward Vius Magna's unshielded cities. Saitama pivoted in the silent dark, eyes narrowing as he gauged the threat. He could smash the hive ships one by one, but the spores were already in flight. Swatting them individually would be like halting a sandstorm grain by grain. For the first time since entering this universe, the hero's expression hardened into true resolve. Consecutive normal punches. His arms blurred, moving not merely at incomprehensible speed, but in a way that made location itself seem optional. Each strike overlapping the next until motion became continuum. Every blow unleashed a pressure wave that rolled through the vacuum, a ripple in the fabric of space-time, intercepting the descending spores and igniting them to nothingness. Thousands of organic warheads burst in perfect sequence, flaring into a pyrotechnic storm that briefly outshone the system's own star. The defense station's augurs recorded the unthinkable. A lone human generating more kinetic force than their combined weapon batteries could produce in an entire standard year. Yet the Tyranid hive mind was immense and inexhaustible. For every spore Saitama destroyed, 10 more were launched, slipping through the ever-thinning curtain of detonations and plunging toward the hive cities below. On Vius Magna's surface, warning klaxons screamed across steel canyons as the Planetary Defense Force and the 84th Kadon Regiment scrambled to fortify power relays, water plants, and hab sanctums. Civilians crowded into shelters, whispering frantic prayers to the God Emperor for salvation. In the highest spire of Hive Primus, Governor Hellbane unlocked the encrypted codes for planetary self-destruct, a last dreadful measure to deny the Tyranids their prize. In the Strategium, Inquisitor Hellbrant stood rigid before a shifting array of tactical hololiths that already showed the first spore pods breaching atmosphere. His expression was carved from stone as Vox reports poured in of Tyranid organisms erupting from fresh craters. "The Saint will deliver us," declared Cardinal Droven, who had joined the command circle. "You witnessed what he did to the hive ship." "The Saint," Hellbrant said with Arctic calm, "cannot be everywhere at once. Even his power has limits." The Cardinal's eyes flared. "Blasphemy! He is the Emperor's own instrument. He is an anomaly," the Inquisitor replied evenly. "And like every anomaly, he will one day be contained." Before Droven could retort, alarms shrieked again. A new contact blazed across the tactical display, an energy signature hurtling toward the planet at speeds beyond calculation. "By the throne, what is that?" Hellbane demanded. Magos Theron, who had been silently communing with the sensorium cogitators, looked up, mechadendrites trembling. "It is him. The anomaly. He is returning." Outside, Saitama tore through the upper atmosphere like a living meteor, his yellow suit unscathed by the furnace heat that would have vaporized any other being. He had already annihilated the remaining hive ships, but not before thousands of spores slipped past his barrage. Now he watched their fiery descent as they slammed into Vius Magna's surface, each impact disgorging Tyranid warrior organisms that immediately tore through everything in reach. Adjusting his course, Saitama streaked toward the largest knot of alien life signs. He descended into what had once been the noble quarter of Hive Secundus, now remade into a living nightmare. Towering spires dripped with fast-spreading digestive pools, and the streets crawled with swarms of razor-clawed hormagaunts and lumbering carnifexes. At the infestation's heart loomed a massive hive tyrant, its psychic link to the distant hive mind directing the chaos below. The Xeno's host sensed his arrival. Hundreds of creatures pivoted in eerie unison, their alien perceptions locking onto this inexplicable intruder. Through its synaptic lattice, the hive mind examined him. recognizing raw power without understanding its source, acknowledging threat without grasping how to counter it. The hive tyrant loosed a keening shriek that shattered what glass remained in nearby spires. At once, the entire swarm surged forward like a tidal wave of flesh and chitin. Saitama planted his boots and faced them. "You're supposed to be tough, right? Show me what you've got." The first hormagaunts reached him in a blur of scything talons. He stepped into them without urgency, every flick of his fist reducing a creature to unrecognizable pulp. He wasn't even calling out special moves, just brushing the attackers aside like bothersome insects. Larger warrior forms followed. A carnifex, a living siege engine of bone and muscle, thundered toward him, each footfall cracking the ferrocrete beneath. Saitama shifted slightly, a calm sidestep, and tapped the beast with one finger. The colossal creature detonated in an instant, showering the district with ichor and shards of shattered exoskeleton. Through the dying eyes of its brood, the hive tyrant recalculated. This foe could not be drowned in sheer numbers, nor wounded by conventional bioweapons. The hive mind issued its verdict: adapt or perish. The tyrant released a psychic scream so violent that every human within a kilometer felt blood trickle from ruptured ears. Even as the echo lingered, its immense body began to reconfigure. Living tissue liquefied and flowed, bones and chitin sliding into new alignments. Limbs lengthened like growing steel, and its carapace thickened into overlapping plates of a design never before manifested in this splinter fleet. Most striking of all, a fresh organ coalesced in its chest cavity, throbbing with concentrated, warp-born power. Saitama watched the grotesque metamorphosis with mild curiosity. "Hey, that's pretty cool. You powering up?" The transformation completed, the monster now towered twice its previous height, a form perfectly optimized by the hive mind's relentless analysis of Saitama's attacks. The newborn organ in its chest pulsed like a captive star, channeling psychic force directly from the shadow in the warp. Without warning, it lunged forward, impossibly fast for such mass. Talons wreathed in crackling psychic energy sharp enough to rend reality itself. They scythed toward Saitama from several angles at once. For the first time, he actually had to move. He slipped backward, surprise flickering across his face as one blazing claw barely grazed his yellow suit and tore the fabric. "Huh?" he said, glancing down at the ragged edge. "You actually damaged my suit. That's new." The hive tyrant pressed the assault, vents along its arms, belching incandescent bioplasma. The superheated flood engulfed Saitama, cloaking him in a roiling cloud of steam and alien chemicals. When the haze thinned, the bald hero stood unscathed, but the easy indifference on his face had hardened into something far more intent. The familiar mask of boredom vanished from Saitama's face, replaced by a spark of genuine excitement. "Okay," he said evenly. "Now we're getting somewhere." The hive tyrant lunged once more, but this time Saitama met it head-on. His fist drove straight into the creature's chest, striking precisely over the freshly formed psychic organ. For the briefest instant, its reinforced carapace held, then shattered like brittle stone. The organ collapsed inward, triggering a psychic feedback surge that rippled through the synaptic network and stunned every Tyranid organism across Veus Magna. The massive beast reeled, its body already straining to regenerate the ruined core. But Saitama allowed no recovery. Serious consecutive punches. His arms blurred beyond the reach of sight, each strike delivered with perfectly tuned force to maximize destruction while containing the blast radius. The tyrant's heavily adapted frame disintegrated under the relentless assault. Great chunks of chitin and flesh torn away until the monstrosity slumped into a swiftly dissolving pool of organic sludge. With the synaptic keystone destroyed, the remaining Tyranids fell into chaos. Deprived of the hive mind's direction, they turned on anything that moved, be it human defender or fellow Xenos, tearing each other apart in frenzied confusion. Saitama straightened, a faint shadow of disappointment settling over his features. "That was almost interesting," he murmured. "For a moment I thought you might actually give me a real fight." From the dripping darkness of a half-digested hab block, a new presence emerged. This figure wore the unmistakable power armor of the Adeptus Astartes, yet the once holy plate was twisted and corrupted by long immersion in the warp. Black Legion sigils writhed across its surface like living scars, and his helmet had been refaped into a snarling demon's face. Warp fire licked along the edges of the power sword he carried. "Impressive display, mortal." The Chaos Space Marine rasped, his voice grinding through the Vox grill with predatory malice. "I am Lord Maphistan Vex, champion of the Black Legion, chosen of Abaddon, slayer of worlds," the Chaos Marine declared, lifting his power sword as warp light crawled across the blade like living fire. "I have watched your battles from within the Imperium. Your strength has drawn the gaze of the ruinous powers themselves." "Uh-huh," Saitama replied, face as blank as ever. "So, you're here to fight me?" Vex laughed. Sound warped and metallic through his helmet. "Fight you? No, mortal. I come to offer you the blessings of chaos. Join us, and the galaxy will bow before your might. The Corpse Emperor's Imperium rots. Be part of the new dominion that will rise from its ashes." Saitama scratched his head. "Yeah, I'm not really interested. I'm just a hero for fun." The Chaos Champion stiffened. "You refuse the gifts of the Dark Gods? Do you even comprehend what I offer? Power beyond imagination, immortality, godhood itself." "I'm already too strong," Saitama said with a casual shrug. "That's kind of my whole problem." Rage boiled off Vex like heat from a furnace. "Then die, fool." He lunged, driving the warp-wreathed power sword straight for Saitama's heart. The blade struck the yellow suit and stopped cold. No puncture, no scorch, nothing but the absurd sight of a weapon that had ended chapter masters and carved apart greater demons, halted by what looked like common cloth. "Impossible," Vex breathed. "This blade has drunk the blood of Space Marine lords, severed the limbs of warp-spawned gods." Saitama tilted his head, bored. "Are you done? Because there are still a lot of those bug things I need to deal with." With an enraged bellow, the Chaos Champion unleashed everything he had. Dark warp energy erupted from his armor, coalescing into writhing tentacles of pure corruption that lashed outward, seeking to entangle the unshaken hero. At the same instant, Lord Maphistan Vex began to intone a chant in a language older than mankind itself. Syllables of raw power capable of shattering mortal minds. Saitama merely looked faintly irritated. Serious headbutt. He inclined his head and drove his bare skull forward. His forehead struck the Chaos Marine's demon-shaped helm with a sound like the universe ripping apart. In that moment, Lord Maphistan Vex, champion of the Black Legion, chosen of Abaddon, slayer of worlds, did not simply die or disintegrate. He was erased so utterly that even the warp retained no echo of his existence. The dark energies he had summoned unraveled like smoke in a gale, and the half-formed words of his blasphemous spell faded into perfect silence. Saitama straightened and dusted his shoulders. One punch again. Well, one headbutt still counts. In the days that followed, The remaining Tyranid organisms on Veus Magna were hunted down and exterminated. Their threat diminished to scattered pests without the direction of a hive mind. Dangerous, yes, but manageable. The 84th Kadon Regiment, reinforced by local PDF units and guided by eyewitness testimony of the Saints' feats, methodically purged hive after hive of Xenos corruption. Adeptus Mechanicus vessels soon entered orbit to investigate the unprecedented devastation Saitama had inflicted on the Tyranid bioships. Never before had a hive fleet been annihilated so completely with so few Imperial casualties. Tech priests harvested fragments of Tyranid biomass for study, many voicing a desire for closer scrutiny of the mysterious being responsible. Meanwhile, in the governor's palace, a council of far greater weight convened. Inquisitor Hellbrant sat with representatives from both Ordo Malleus and Ordo Hereticus. Standing beside them was a towering figure, clad in the silvered power armor of the Grey Knights, the Emperor's most secret weapon against demonic invasion. "This matter has moved beyond my mandate alone," Hellbrant admitted, his voice edged with reluctant respect. The anomaly designated Saitama presents a potential threat category unknown in any Imperial record. Brother Captain Vortigern of the Grey Knights inclined his helm in grave agreement. "I have reviewed the battle data," he said. "His capacity to unmake warp entities by sheer physical force defies every principle we know, even those wielded with sanctified weapons and the strongest psychic disciplines. My battle brothers would struggle to achieve what he performs with effortless ease," said Brother Captain Vortigern, his voice a deep echo within the silver helm. "He has captured the hearts and minds of the masses," added Inquisitor Morgana of the Ordo Hereticus. "The cult of personality forming around him threatens the very core of Imperial faith. Already some dare to whisper that he is not merely the Emperor's messenger, but his equal." "Heresy," Hellbrant agreed grimly. "Yet it is also true that his actions have saved this world from enemies that might have shattered even significant Imperial forces." Vortigern's gaze hardened. "The question stands. What is to be done with him?" At that moment, the great doors opened. Saitama stepped in, Kalia at his side, still inexplicably holding to her role as his guide despite every official attempt to separate them. "Sorry I'm late," Saitama said. "There was a riot in the Underhive. Folks brawling over food or something. I helped sort it out." Chairs scraped and armor creaked as the Inquisitors and the Grey Knight rose, hands moving toward weapons. Psychic tension flooded the chamber as Vortigern quietly summoned his inner gifts. Saitama raised both palms. "Whoa, calm down. I only came to talk." Hellbrant's eyes narrowed. "About what?" "About going home," Saitama replied. "It's been fun and all, but I kinda miss my apartment, and my friend Genos is probably worried. Plus, the monsters here are all pretty much the same. Big, scary, lots of teeth or tentacles. It's getting repetitive." The assembled Inquisitors exchanged wary glances. "You wish to return to your own reality?" Morgana asked. "Yeah. You've got scientists or psychers or whatever who can figure out how to send me back, right?" For the first time, a hint of uncertainty crossed Vortigern's stern features. "You truly want to leave, when you could rule this galaxy with your power?" Saitama blinked, almost amused. "Rule? That sounds like a lot of paperwork." "No thanks. I just want to go back to being a hero for fun," Saitama said simply. A heavy stillness settled over the chamber until, unexpectedly, Inquisitor Hellbrant began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and swelled into a deep, unrestrained roar of genuine amusement. Something none of those present had ever heard from the Door Inquisitor. When he finally caught his breath, he said, the greatest power this galaxy has ever seen. And all he wants is to return to his tiny apartment. Is that so strange? Saitama asked, head tilted. In this universe, yes, Hellbrand answered. Power, once claimed, is almost never surrendered. It is hoarded, guarded, wielded to dominate. That is the way of things. Saitama only shrugged. Sounds exhausting. The Inquisitor's mirth faded into thoughtful calculation. Very well. I will petition the Adeptus Mechanicus to explore methods of opening a portal back to your reality. Their cogitators have been studying the space-time disturbance that delivered you here. In theory, the process might be reversed. Great, Saitama said. How long will that take? Months at minimum, Hellbrand admitted. Perhaps years. Saitama's shoulders slumped. Oh. The Inquisitor continued smoothly. In the meantime, I propose an arrangement. You will continue to eliminate threats to this world and others nearby under Imperial guidance. In return, the full resources of the Adeptus Mechanicus will be devoted to returning you home. And what about people calling me a saint and all that? It's kind of weird. Brother Captain Vortigern stepped forward, his silver armor gleaming. The Ecclesiarchy will handle the religious implications of your presence. It would not be the first time the Emperor sent an unexpected messenger to aid humanity in its darkest hour. Saitama considered, then nodded. So I just keep punching monsters while you work on sending me back? Precisely, Hellbrand confirmed. Okay, I can do that. As Saitama and Kalaya turned to leave, the assembled Inquisitors and the Grey Knight quietly resumed their seats, the chamber once more cloaked in the measured gravity of Imperial deliberation. The great chamber remained silent until the doors sealed, and Hellbrand activated the psychic baffles that cloaked the room. Only then did Inquisitor Morgana speak in a low, deliberate voice. You have no intention of sending him home, do you? Hellbrand's face betrayed nothing. The Imperium has never surrendered a weapon once acquired, especially one of such annihilating potential. He is not a weapon. Brother Captain Vortigern countered, his tone hard. He is a man. An impossible man, yes, but still a man. Everything and everyone serves the Emperor's purpose. Hellbrand replied evenly, whether they realize it or not. Vortigern's silvered helm inclined slightly, the air around him tightening. Be careful, Inquisitor. Those who try to bind powers they cannot comprehend often perish by them. A risk I am willing to take, Hellbrand said without flinching. For the Imperium, far below, in the smoky underhive tavern known as the Broken Aquila, Saitama sat alone at a battered corner table, cradling a mug of local recaf that barely resembled the coffee he remembered. Across from him, Kalaya watched with quiet worry. You don't actually believe them, do you? About sending you home? She asked softly. Saitama lifted one shoulder in a careless shrug. Does it matter? I'll stick around for a while and help out. If they find a way, great. If not. His words drifted off as he stared into the dark liquid. If not, I'll figure something out. He looked up and met her eyes. This place is pretty messed up, you know. Everyone's always fighting, dying for an emperor they've never even seen, living in fear of everything. Kalaya's eyes widened, shocked by what sounded dangerously close to heresy. The Imperium is mankind's only shield against the darkness, she recited, though her voice wavered with doubt. Maybe, Saitama said, but it's a lousy shield if life isn't worth living for most people. Before she could answer, the tavern door slammed open. A PDF trooper stumbled inside, uniform torn and blood spattered. The Saint, he gasped when he spotted Saitama. Praise the Emperor, I found you. Saitama rose from his seat. What's wrong? The soldiers struggled for breath. New contact in orbit. Mechanicus ships report it's like nothing they've ever seen. Not Tyranid, not Imperial, no classification in any Xenos archive, the breathless PDF trooper reported. A spark of anticipation lit Saitama's eyes. Something new. The Vox network is in chaos with sightings, the soldier added. They're calling it a cosmic entity. Saitama set his mug on the scarred tabletop. Sounds promising. Where is it now? Descending through the upper atmosphere. Orbital defenses can't lock on. It's as if it exists half out of phase with reality. For the first time since arriving on Veus Magna, a genuine smile crossed Saitama's face. Now that sounds interesting. High above Hive Primus, reality itself cracked. Not with the greasy nausea of a warp breach, but in a crystalline splintering that bent light into impossible hues. From that shimmering wound emerged a presence of incomprehensible scale, its shape endlessly shifting between matter and pure energy. Across the planet, millions gazed upward in awe and terror. Vox channels flooded with frantic calls. Priests of the ecclesiarchy led panicked masses in desperate prayers to the emperor. In the governor's palace, tactical augurs flared and died, incapable of parsing the incomprehensible readings. On the wind-lashed landing pad atop the palace spire, Inquisitor Hellbrand stood flanked by Grey Knights and inquisitorial stormtroopers. Raising his magnoculars, he watched the descending phenomenon and whispered, "Emperor, protect us." "What is that thing?" Brother Captain Vortigern, silver armor gleaming in the twilight, slowly shook his head. "Not of the warp," he said grimly. "Then something else. Something from beyond the boundaries of our universe?" Hellbrand ventured. Before an answer could form, a sudden yellow streak surged upward from the lower hive, a blur of raw intent and quiet excitement. Saitama rocketed toward the descending being, propelled by a purpose rare for him. The entity paused its slow descent, halting a full kilometer above the tallest spire. Its mutable form settled into a vaguely human silhouette, woven of condensed starlight and veils of dark matter. When it spoke, no air carried the sound. Instead, its voice resonated inside every conscious mind on Veus Magna, a calm yet immense presence that filled the world like the echo of creation itself. "At last, I have found you, Saitama." The voice did not pass through air, but vibrated directly in the marrow of every living thing on Veus Magna. The bald hero floated before the vast, flickering shape, arms folded, his expression flat. "Do I know you?" "I am Karak, devourer of dimensions, consumer of realities," the entity intoned, its form shifting like a living constellation. "You pursued my avatar through the dimensional rift. Now I have come to finish what was begun." Recognition flickered across Saitama's face. "Oh, you're that weird portal monster I chased back home. You look different." "That was merely a probe," Karak replied, its light swelling. "A fragment sent to test your universe's defenses. When you annihilated it, I became aware of your existence." Saitama tilted his head. "So you came all this way just to fight me?" For the first time in this galaxy, real anticipation crept into his voice. "Are you strong?" The cosmic entity pulsed, sending psychic shockwaves across the planet. Trained psychers screamed and fell as their minds overloaded. Even ordinary humans felt the pressure like nails behind their eyes. "I have consumed galaxies," Karak thundered. "I have extinguished suns for sustenance. I have battled beings that predate your universe's birth." "Sounds promising," Saitama said mildly. "But can you actually give me a real fight? Everyone here talks big but goes down in one punch." "Perhaps a demonstration," Karak murmured. It extended what might have been an arm. pulse of raw existence lanced downward. One of the hive cities below, millions of souls, vanished. Not burned, not shattered, but erased so utterly that even memory began to bleed from the minds of witnesses. That was a fraction of my strength, Karak boomed. Shall we begin our true battle? Saitama's eyes hardened. Those were innocent people. Irrelevant, Karak replied. All life is fuel for my ascension. Saitama cracked his knuckles, the sound sharp in the vacuum. I was hoping for a good fight. Now I'm just going to end this quickly. The entity swelled outward, its body blooming into a miniature galaxy of annihilating energy. You cannot harm what exists beyond physical reality, it roared, stars dying in its voice. Saitama only narrowed his eyes. Saitama regarded the spiraling vortex of starlight with mild curiosity. Pretty lights. Is this supposed to hurt? Karak's luminous mass suddenly contracted, compressing around him with the gravity of a collapsing neutron star. Yet the bald hero remained unfazed, drifting calmly in the crushing void. Are you not even curious? Karak's voice pulsed inside every mind on the planet, tinged now with frustration. Do you not wonder how I tracked you across dimensions? How I pierced the walls between realities? Not really, Saitama said flatly. I'm more interested in whether you can actually give me a challenge. The entity's form rippled and condensed, assuming a sharper humanoid outline that eerily echoed Saitama's own. Its body forged of seething cosmic energy and dark matter. Then let us test your limits, champion of creation's soil, Karak thundered. It struck, not a mere physical blow, but an assault that crossed dimensions, aimed not at Saitama's body, but at the very concept of his existence. Space-time itself moaned beneath the force. Saitama caught the blow in his bare hand and nodded once. Not bad, he admitted. I actually felt that. Shock reverberated through the being of galaxies. Impossible. No mortal vessel can withstand contact with my true form. Yeah, I get that a lot, Saitama replied almost apologetically. He drew back his fist. My turn. Serious. Serious punch. The strike landed squarely at the entity's blazing core. For a single suspended heartbeat, reality seemed to pause. Then cracks appeared, thin fissures racing through Karak's infinite substance, like fractures spreading across dark glass. What are you? Came the dying mental echo. I told you already, Saitama said as the cosmos itself trembled. Just a hero for fun. The impossible form of Karak shattered, neither exploding nor dissolving, but splintering into silence, like a mirror struck by a celestial hammer. Its light extinguished in a final, soundless implosion. Each shattered fragment of Karak carried a fading echo of the whole, shrieking in disbelief as it scattered across dimensions and winked out of existence under the force of Saitama's strike. The crushing psychic weight blanketing Veus Magna lifted at once. The impossible colors bled from the heavens. Reality knitted itself together again, though the hive city Karak had erased remained a permanent void, a wound the world could never heal. Saitama drifted down to the palace landing pad, where Inquisitor Hellbrant and the Grey Knights stood in tense silence. His face had already settled back into mild boredom. It's done, he said simply. Brother Captain Vortigern gazed upward at the empty sky and murmured, By the Emperor's grace. What kind of power have we witnessed? Hellbrand's sharp eyes stayed fixed on the hero. You destroyed it completely. Pretty much, Saitama replied, rolling a shoulder as if easing a slight cramp. It was actually kind of fun. For a moment I thought it might be a real challenge. You speak of annihilating a cosmic entity as though you were swatting an insect. Hellbrand said, his voice tight with awe and controlled fear. Saitama only shrugged. That's kind of my whole problem. Everything's too easy. The Inquisitor drew himself upright, cloak settling into perfect folds. The creature mentioned a dimensional gateway, a path between realities. Yeah, Saitama said. I guess that's how I ended up here. I was chasing that thing, or some piece of it, when I went through a portal. Then perhaps, Hellbrand suggested carefully, the key to sending you home lies not in Mechanicus technology, but in forces like the one you just destroyed. If residual energies from this encounter can be captured, they might form the basis of a return passage. Saitama tilted his head, considering. So, I either find another of those things, or you somehow bottle what's left of this one. Precisely, the Inquisitor said, his calculating gaze never wavering. I will consult with the Mechanicus adepts immediately. For the first time, a glimmer of genuine hope crossed Saitama's face. You think you can do it? Send me home? Hellbrand inclined his head, deliberate and calm. I believe it may now be possible. In the weeks following the cosmic entity's annihilation, Veus Magna entered an uneasy peace. The loss of an entire hive city left millions dead and unleashed a refugee crisis that strained every planetary resource. Yet the triumph over a threat beyond comprehension only deepened the fervor of the Saint of the One-Punch cult. Icons of Saitama's likeness appeared in shrines and chapels across the planet. Street preachers hailed him as the Emperor's chosen champion, a living reminder of divine power shielding humanity. Others whispered even bolder heresies, that perhaps he was not the Emperor's messenger at all, but something greater, a being beyond even the master of mankind. The Inquisition and Ecclesiarchy labored without rest to suppress these dangerous interpretations, but popular devotion proved difficult to steer. The common folk had watched their saint crush terrors that imperial doctrine declared invincible. How could their faith remain unchanged? 3 weeks after Karak's destruction, Saitama found himself inside a vast Mechanicus sanctum buried deep beneath Veus Magna's surface. The chamber pulsed with arcane power. Cogitators the size of hab blocks processed incomprehensible torrents of data, their machine spirits howling hymns of calculation. At its heart stood a massive circular platform encircled by instruments of indescribable complexity. A seamless fusion of imperial science and painstakingly reverse-engineered Xenos technology. Archmagos Dominus Veneratus 9 glided forward, mechadendrites twisting like excited serpents. The cold metal tips sparking with restrained energy as he prepared to reveal what their relentless labor had achieved. The calculations are complete, Archmagos Dominus Veneratus 9 declared, his Vox synthesizer layering high Gothic with crisp bursts of binaric cant. We have isolated the unique energy signature of your home dimension by analyzing residual patterns in your cellular matrix and the interdimensional particles released when the cosmic entity was destroyed. Saitama, clad in his now legendary yellow suit and white cape, gave a brief nod. So this machine will send me home? In theory, yes, the Archmagos replied. It will open a temporary breach in the walls between realities, aligned precisely to the dimensional coordinates we have calculated. And it won't, destroy the universe or anything? Saitama asked. The Mechanicus Lord made a sound like grinding gears, possibly laughter. The risk of catastrophic dimensional collapse remains within acceptable parameters. Not exactly comforting, Saitama muttered. From the observation gallery encircling the chamber, Inquisitor Hellbrand watched in silence, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood Governor Hellbane, Brother Captain Vortigern, and senior representatives of the many Imperial factions now invested in the bald hero's fate. Are we certain this is wise? The governor asked softly. To relinquish such a powerful asset? Asset, Hellbrand echoed. He is not a weapon to be wielded, Governor. He is a force of nature, and like all such forces, he is as dangerous as he is useful. But think of the good he could do for the Imperium, Hellbane pressed. Consider the theological consequences, Hellbrand countered. Already cults form in his name. What happens when those movements spread to other worlds? When the faithful begin to ask why the Emperor, in all his divinity, does not simply strike down humanity's enemies with a single blow as our saint does. The governor's eyes widened. Heresy. Precisely. The Imperium is founded on faith and sacrifice, on the truth that victory demands blood, endurance, and death. What happens to that foundation when someone appears who renders war effortless? Far below, on the humming chamber floor, a small figure threaded through the towering silhouettes of machine priests and their living engines. Kalaya, the hive-born ganger who had stubbornly remained at Saitama's side, looked fragile amid the cathedral of machinery. She stopped before him, voice steady though her eyes shone. So, you're really leaving? Saitama nodded once. Yeah, it's time to go home. Will you remember us? Remember this place? Kalaya asked quietly. A faint smile curved Saitama's lips. Kinda hard to forget a galaxy where everyone's always at war with demons, aliens, and each other. Kalaya gave a soft laugh, more sad than amused. I suppose it is. She hesitated, then slipped a chain from her neck, a small medallion stamped with the Imperial Aquila. Take this, so you'll remember the Imperium. Saitama accepted the gift with surprising gentleness. Thanks. It's been interesting. High above, Archmagos Dominus Veneratus IX raised a mechadendrite to signal his tech priests. We are ready to begin the dimensional breach procedure. Please stand on the central platform. Saitama stepped to the marked circle. Around him, vast machinery awakened with a deepening hum. Energy coils glowed brighter and brighter, while the surrounding priests chanted in Binharic tones, their metallic voices intoning complex prayers to soothe the machine spirits forced to perform such dangerous, near-heretical calculations. Wait! A sharp voice rang from the chamber entrance. All eyes turned as Cardinal Droven hurried inside, crimson robes flaring around his thin frame. Behind him, acolytes followed with swinging incense censers and heavy tomes of scripture. The saint cannot depart without the Emperor's blessing, the Cardinal declared, striding toward the platform. Saitama shifted uneasily. I'm not really a saint, you know. The Emperor works through many vessels, Droven replied, lifting his arms in solemn invocation. Some know their purpose, some do not. But all fulfill his divine will. He began a resonant prayer, his acolytes joining with perfect harmony, their chant weaving through the cavernous chamber and clashing with the rising mechanical drone of the dimensional gateway. From the observation gallery above, Inquisitor Hellbrand stiffened. Something was wrong. Every movement of the Cardinal seemed just a fraction too measured, too precise to be simple devotion. Hellbrand's sharp command cut through the rising chant. Captain, do you sense it? Brother Captain Vortigern narrowed his eyes beneath the shadow of his psychic hood. Warp interference, he said grimly, subtle but growing. Below, Cardinal Droven's sonorous prayer climbed to a sudden, triumphant peak. As the last syllable left his mouth, his eyes ignited with inner fire. Thin seams split across his skin, peeling back to expose not flesh and bone, but a writhing core of raw warp energy barely wrapped in human form. For the glory of Tzeentch, changer of ways, the creature shrieked. The saint shall not depart, but ascend. The attending acolytes convulsed and melted, their bodies distorting into the shrieking shapes of pink horrors, lesser demons of the architect of fate. They capered madly about the Mechanicus platform, hurling bolts of eldritch energy into the delicate dimensional apparatus. Throne of terror, gasped Governor Hellbane. A demon host? He choked. Not a host, Vortigern corrected darkly, drawing his nemesis force sword in a hiss of sanctified steel. But a greater demon in disguise, veiling its essence with sorcery. It must have plotted this for weeks. On the chamber floor, panicked tech priests scattered as their precious machine shuddered under corruption. The carefully calculated dimensional breach warped and twisted, its coordinates unraveling beneath the demon's influence. Saitama stood amid the chaos, expression more irritated than alarmed. Seriously? Right when I was about to go home? The thing that had been Cardinal Droven swelled monstrously, shedding all human pretense. Vast, feathered wings unfurled with a thunderclap, and a colossal avian head turned, multifaceted eyes locking on the lone hero. The air vibrated with a voice like grinding worlds. The changer of ways has foreseen your destiny. You shall not return to a mundane existence. You shall ascend to demonhood. United with the warp, your power will remake this galaxy in glorious change. Above the platform, the once precise dimensional breach now boiled with chaotic light, swelling beyond all control as tendrils of unreality licked outward, threatening to tear the fabric of space itself. Instead of opening a clean gateway to Saitama's home dimension, the vast machine ripped savagely at reality itself, widening a raw wound through which twisted, gibbering faces of warp spawn leered. From the observation gallery, Inquisitor Hellbrant snapped into action, activating his wrist-mounted Vox. Initiate containment protocol Omega Malachite. Seal the chamber. Alarms blared as colossal blast doors rumbled shut, while warning runes flared crimson. The entire facility began preparations to detach from the hive structure and self-scuttle if the demonic breach could not be contained. Brother Captain Vortigern and his Grey Knights vaulted over the railing of the gallery, dropping 30 meters and landing in perfect formation. Their silvered armor absorbed the impact as they formed a protective ring around the expanding rift. Force weapons raised, chanting the sanctified litanies of banishment that thrummed with psychic power. Through the confusion and roaring alarms, Saitama remained on the central platform, his arms loose at his sides, irritation clouding his calm expression. "I've had enough of this," he said flatly. He stepped toward the monstrous figure that loomed above. The Greater Daemon of Tzeentch, ever shifting, its form a nightmare of colors and shapes that defied mortal comprehension. "You cannot resist the will of Tzeentch," the creature boomed, voice shaking the walls. "The strands of fate are already rewoven. The breach you sought will not lead home, but into the crystal labyrinth of the Lord of Change himself." Saitama cracked his knuckles, unfazed. "You know," he said evenly, "I was actually starting to like this place. Sure, it's grim and everyone's always fighting, but the people here try their best with what they have." He glanced toward Kalia, crouched behind the wreckage of a fallen cogitator. "Some of them are even pretty decent." "Meaningless sentiment," the demon sneered. "All mortals are pawns in the great game." "Yeah, I keep hearing that. Games, thrones, gods, emperors," Saitama replied, shaking his head in quiet dismissal. "But in the end," Saitama said evenly, "it's just bullies picking on people who can't fight back." He raised his fist, an almost lazy motion. Yet the demon hesitated, as if the air itself warned of what was coming. "I'm going to punch you now," he stated matter-of-factly. "And then I'm going to fix that portal and go home." "You can't." cannot." The creature began, but Saitama had already spoken the words. "No. Serious punch." His fist sank into the demon's ever-shifting chest. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then reality convulsed. The impact drove through the creature's physical shell and into the very warped stuff of its being. The Greater Daemon of Tzeentch detonated in absolute silence. Its body, its psychic essence, even the idea of its existence ripped apart. The shock of the blow raced across dimensions and struck the heart of the crystal labyrinth itself, sending a faint but undeniable tremor through the impossible palace of the Changer of Ways. The corrupted dimensional breach convulsed, then began to contract. Wild warp energies that had threatened to unmake the chamber folded inward, tamed by the echo of Saitama's strike. All around, the shrieking pink horrors were sucked back into the collapsing rift, their twisted forms unraveling as their link to the material world failed. In moments, the immense chamber was still again, broken only by the groans of wounded tech priests and the fading wail of containment alarms. Saitama turned toward Archmagos Veneratus IX, who emerged from behind the shimmer of a protective energy field. "Is the machine broken?" he asked. The Archmagos extended a cluster of mechadendrites, interfacing with the dimensional engine. "Negative," came the precise reply after a brief diagnostic hum. "The demon's interference has been neutralized. Calculations remain intact, though the power systems are heavily strained." Saitama looked around the vast chamber, at the Grey Knights still poised with weapons raised, at Inquisitor Hellbrand observing from the gallery, and at Kalia slowly stepping out from her hiding place. "Well," he said simply, "it's been interesting." The Archmagos began the activation sequence again, the great machine coming alive with a rising hum as energy coils glowed and the air thickened with power. This time the dimensional breach formed as designed, a flawless circular portal shimmering above the platform. Through it stretched the familiar skyline of Z City, the quiet streets of home. Saitama turned back to the assembled Imperial dignitaries for a final glance. "Thanks for helping me get back. Sorry about all the trouble." Inquisitor Hellbrand stepped forward, his dark coat settling around him. "The Imperium owes you a debt, Saitama. You have saved countless lives." The hero shrugged lightly. "Just doing my job. Or my hobby, I guess." He looked at Kalia and allowed himself a small smile. "Try to stay out of trouble." The young gang girl could only nod, tears bright on her cheeks. Saitama faced the portal again, taking in the world he had left behind. Then, with a casual step that belied the weight of the moment, he crossed the shimmering threshold between dimensions. Behind him, the portal folded inward and vanished with a sound like a soft sigh, leaving only empty air. In the silence that followed, Inquisitor Hellbrand turned to Brother Captain Vortigern. "It is done." The Grey Knight inclined his head. For better or worse, the anomaly has returned to his own reality. Governor Hellbane exhaled, the tension of weeks finally breaking. And what of the theological implications? The cults that worship him will not simply disappear. "They will be managed," Hellbrand replied, with cold certainty. "The ecclesiarchy will adapt the narrative. The Saint of the One Punch will become what the Imperium requires him to be. The Saint of the One Punch would live on as legend, a story of the Emperor's mysterious messenger who arrived in the planet's darkest hour and then departed to rejoin his side once the mission was fulfilled." "A convenient fiction," Brother Captain Vortigern remarked. "All religion is convenient fiction, Brother Captain," Inquisitor Hellbrand replied quietly. What matters is that it serves the Imperium's needs. The vast chamber fell silent until the heavy tread of the Archmagos drew near, his mechadendrites still linked to the dimensional engine. "Inquisitor, there is something you should know," he said. "Vox, carrying a faint edge of distortion. The dimensional coordinates we used, the reality to which we returned the anomaly, are not as remote as we first assumed." Hellbrandt's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Our universe and his exist in parallel, separated by what ancient scripture calls the membrane of reality," the Archmagos intoned. "This membrane is not uniform. There are places where it thins, where realities bleed together. You suggest he might return?" Hellbrandt pressed. The machine priest emitted a soft, static burst. Hesitation translated into sound. "I am suggesting only that what has occurred once could occur again. The barriers between dimensions have been weakened by these events. Statistically, a recurrence is possible." Hellbrandt stood unmoving, weighing the words. At last, he inclined his head. "Establish permanent monitoring. If there is any sign, any hint of another breach, I want to know at once." "As you command," the Archmagos replied. The Inquisitor turned away, his gaze distant and unreadable. The Imperium had endured the visit of the being called Saitama. It had bent beneath the theological shock of his impossible might, but had not broken. Yet Hellbrandt understood that the ripples of that presence would spread for centuries, reshaping doctrine and belief in subtle, unforeseen ways. And somewhere beyond the thinning veil of realities, perhaps on a day the galaxy least expected, the bald hero might once again step across the stars, the saint of the One Punch. Neither demon nor angel, but something wholly other, a force of nature wrapped in human form, a hero for fun. In a modest apartment in Z City, Saitama sat cross-legged on his futon, television flickering before him while he cradled a steaming bowl of udon. The soft glow of the screen traced across his smooth, bald head, his face unreadable as ever. On the wall behind him hung a small medallion engraved with the double-headed Imperial Aquila, its metal wings catching a stray breeze from the open window. Far off, sirens began to wail. The Monster Association was on the move again, and heroes were being summoned to the fight. Saitama exhaled a quiet sigh, set his noodles aside, and rose. "Guess I should get going," he said to the empty room. Pulling on his familiar yellow suit and white cape, he paused for an instant, eyes resting on the medallion. A flicker of something like nostalgia softened his expression before his usual mild boredom returned. "Maybe the monsters here will give me a good fight," he murmured. But even as the words left his lips, he knew they rang hollow. After trading blows with greater demons and unraveling a cosmic entity with a single strike, after tearing the fabric of realities themselves, what could the creatures of his own world possibly offer? That was the quiet curse of limitless strength. Not merely that every opponent fell to a single punch, but that each effortless victory robbed the act of meaning. Stepping out onto the balcony, Saitama launched himself into the sky with an unhurried leap. His white cape streamed behind him like the outstretched wings of the Imperial Aquila, gleaming in the setting sun, as he arrowed toward the distant chaos of another monster attack. A stray thought followed. Somewhere in the grim darkness of that other universe, perhaps Inquisitor Hellbrandt still watched the thinning edges of reality, waiting for the faintest sign of his return. And if those hidden barriers wavered once more, Saitama might yet step across again. Not because he was summoned or in search of a worthier battle, but because in that galaxy of endless war, he had discovered something unexpected. A place where his impossible strength had found a purpose.